The person making $72,000 is wealthier than the person making $155,000. Same city, same age, same year out of college. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why and which one you're currently becoming. Picture two people. The first one, let's call him Marcus, makes $155,000 a year. Software engineer, nice part of town. BMW lease, exposed brick apartment, Peloton he uses twice a month, and a new iPhone every September. Because obviously he's got a LinkedIn that looks like a highlight reel and a bank account that hits $900 3 days before payday. Every single month. He has $4,800 in credit card debt he doesn't talk about at dinner parties. He has basically no emergency fund, and when I tell you he is stressed about money, I mean the kind of stressed where you're doing math in your head while someone's talking to you at a birthday party. Now picture the second person, Dana. She makes $72,000 a year, marketing coordinator, drives a 2019 Honda Civic she paid off in 2023. Keeps her phone until the battery literally refuses to participate. She has $167,000 in net worth, a 6-month emergency fund, and hasn't lost sleep over money since she was 26. Marcus earns more than double Dana's salary. Dana has more than 14 times his net worth. This isn't a fairy tale. These are real financial profiles, and the gap between them has almost nothing to do with income and everything to do with a handful of rules that most people were never taught. And before you say, well, Dana probably lives like a monk and eats rice and beans every night, she doesn't. She travels twice a year, eats out regularly, and owns things she genuinely loves. She just follows rules that protect her from the invisible money drains that quietly hollow out everyone else's bank account. My name is Nick, and today we're going through 12 minimalist money rules that separate people who are always financially stable from people who are always almost there, regardless of what they earn. No budget spreadsheets with 30 tabs, no give up your morning coffee nonsense, just the actual rules, the math behind them, and the systems that make them stick. Let's go. Rule 1. Define your enough number before your income defines it for you. Here's a question almost nobody asks themselves. How much is actually enough? Not how much do I want to earn? Not how much would be nice? How much do you specifically, concretely, mathematically need to live a genuinely comfortable life? And then stop the goalpost from moving. Most people never answer that question. And because they never answer it, the answer defaults to whatever I'm currently making plus a little more. Which means every raise, every promotion, every bonus gets absorbed before it even clears. You make more. You spend more. You feel the same. Repeat for 40 years. Congratulations, you've run a very expensive treadmill. The research on this is fascinating and a little depressing. For most people, emotional well-being does keep rising with income. But the rate of return drops off dramatically somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000. Beyond that, you're spending an enormous amount of money for very small increases in day-to-day happiness. And yet, reported data from Bloomberg and Lending Club shows that roughly 1/3 of households earning over $250,000 a year say they live paycheck to paycheck. $250,000 in 1/3. That's not a math problem. That's a mindset problem. Yeah, specifically the absence of an enough number. Think about what that actually means for a second. These are people earning more in a month than most Americans earn in a year, and nearly half of them are financially fragile. They have the exact same low-grade money panic that someone earning $45,000 has. The panic just lives in a nicer apartment, which means the solution was never the income. The solution was always the rules. And the first rule is knowing in a specific number what you're actually trying to achieve. Here's what this looks like in practice. Take your monthly take-home, after taxes, after retirement contributions, and calculate the bare minimum you need to feel genuinely comfortable, not deprived. Comfortable. Rent, food, transportation, healthcare, some entertainment, some savings. Write that number down. That's your floor. Now at about 20% for breathing room and things you genuinely enjoy. That's your enough number. Every dollar you earn beyond it goes to building freedom, not lifestyle. And critically, Write it down somewhere you'll actually see it. Put it in your phone's notes app. Tape it to your desk. The enough number only works as an anchor if it's visible because the forces pulling you away from it, marketing, social comparison, or your own brain's desire for novelty, are relentless and invisible and working around the clock. The number is your only defense against all of them. Dana defined her enough number at 26. Marcus never defined it at all. That single decision alone explains most of the gap between them. Not the salary difference, not the career choices, not anything external. If you don't define enough, your spending will define it for you, and it will always define it as slightly more than you have. Rule 2, every purchase has a second price tag, and the second one is bigger. You buy something, you see the price, you pay it, transaction complete. Except it's not complete because every purchase you make has a second price tag that doesn't appear on the receipt. It's invisible. It's the amount that money would have been worth if it had been invested instead. And for most purchases, the second price tag absolutely dwarfs the first. Let me show you how brutal this math actually is. That $300 a month car upgrade you justified because I spend a lot of time in my car. Over 25 years at a 7% return, that $300 a month compounds into $243,000. You didn't spend $300 a month on a car. You spent nearly $250,000. You just paid it in monthly installments small enough to feel manageable, so your brain never processed the real number. Not your subscription stack, Netflix, Spotify, Hulu, YouTube Premium, a gym you use inconsistently, the app that syncs your journal to the cloud for $9.99 a month. Americans spend an average of $219 a month on subscriptions. That's $2,600 a year. Over 20 years at 7%, that's $114,000 in streaming services. You've essentially been financing a vacation home in monthly increments of $11.99 and forgetting about it immediately. The DoorDash habit, $50 every 2 or 3 days, roughly $600 a month. That's over $7,000 a year beyond what you'd spend cooking. Over 30 years invested, that's over $700,000. $700,000 for the privilege of not cooking. I'm not saying cooking is always worth it. I'm saying you should know the actual price of not cooking. Now, I want to be honest with you here because I know how this kind of math can feel. It can start to feel like everything is a terrible decision and you should never spend money on anything enjoyable ever again, which is both miserable and unsustainable. That's not the point. The point is that you should be making these decisions consciously with full awareness of the real cost, not because the price tag said $9.99 and that felt fine. Some things are worth the second price tag. A gym membership you actually use, a streaming service you genuinely love, a delivery on a brutal Wednesday night, fine. The question is always, do I know what I'm actually paying, and do I still choose it with that knowledge? Most people are choosing without ever seeing the real number. Every purchase is a choice between the thing and what the money would become. Most people only ever see one of those options. The second price tag is always there. You just have to train yourself to look for it. Rule 3. The identity audit. Figure out who you're actually spending for. Okay, pause for a second. I want you to do something right now. Open your bank or credit card app. Look at your last 15 transactions, not your bills, not your rent, the discretionary stuff, the things you chose. And for each one, ask this question: would I have bought this if nobody would ever know I owned it? Not, would I be embarrassed? Just, would I still want it if it were completely invisible to every other human being? Go ahead, I'll wait. This exercise is uncomfortable because a surprising number of purchases fail that test, and most people are not consciously aware they're making identity purchases. It feels like preference, it feels like taste, but a lot of what we spend on is really just an answer to the question, what does this say about me? Thomas Stanley and William Danko spent decades studying actual millionaires for The Millionaire Next Door. One of their most striking findings: 86% of luxury car owners are not millionaires. The BMW is not a wealth signal. It is, statistically speaking, a debt signal, because the people who actually have the wealth usually aren't driving the BMW. They're driving something reasonable and quietly compounding the difference. The car you're leasing to look successful is being driven past someone's investment account every single month. Social comparison theory, developed by Leon Festinger back in 1954, tells us that humans evaluate their own standing by comparing themselves to others, and we've never been more exposed to others than we are right now. Instagram is essentially a highlight reel of other people's consumption, and your brain cannot fully distinguish between seeing someone else's vacation and evaluating your own status. Every scroll is a quiet little status audit you didn't ask for. And every time you feel that vague sense of inadequacy looking at someone else's new car or kitchen renovation or business class seat, that feeling has a dollar amount attached to it. Retailers know exactly what triggers it. They've spent billions figuring out how to manufacture it. The least you can do is be aware it's happening. Here's the other layer nobody talks about. The people you're trying to impress with your spending usually aren't paying as close attention as you think. They're busy managing their own version of the same feeling. You're spending money to perform wealth for an audience that's too busy performing wealth to notice. That is a genuinely terrible return on investment. Now, go back to those 15 transactions. I count how many you'd genuinely choose again if they were invisible versus how many were, on some level, a communication to other people. If it's more than 3, you have an identity spending problem. And that's the most expensive kind because it scales with your income. The more you earn, the bigger the stage and the more expensive the performance. The rule is not never buy nice things. The rule is know why you're buying them. If you love it and nobody else needs to see it, great. If you're buying it because someone on your timeline got one last week and now you feel vaguely inadequate, that's not preference. That's the algorithm spending your money for you. Rule 4, the 72-hour firewall. All right, I know what's coming. Nick, I have no willpower. I see it, I want it, I buy it. That's just how I'm wired. I hear you, and I have good news. This rule requires 0 willpower. It requires friction. Here's the thing about impulse purchases. They rely on immediacy. The desire is most intense in the first 30 to 60 minutes. Studies show that between 40 and 80% of all purchases are impulse driven. That's not a rounding error. That's the majority of what people spend. And the dopamine hit from deciding to buy something is almost identical to the dopamine hit from actually buying it. Once you've decided, the urgency starts dropping. Now, which means if you create a mandatory pause between wanting something and being able to buy it, you've essentially hacked the system. The 72-hour firewall. For any non-essential purchase over $50, you must wait 72 hours before completing the transaction. You're allowed to put things in your cart. You're allowed to research. You are not allowed to pay. There's something interesting that happens psychologically during the wait. The wanting and the having feel identical in the moment. Your brain lights up the same reward circuitry, whether you're imagining the purchase or completing it, but that feeling is time limited, it fades. And most people discover that about 60% of what they desperately wanted on Monday, they've completely stopped thinking about by Thursday. The 72-hour rule doesn't deny you things. Just make sure the things you actually buy are the ones you actually wanted, not the ones an algorithm surfaced at 11 p.m. when your defenses were down. I know the objection. But what if it goes on sale and I miss it? Let me tell you something. Retailers manufacture urgency. 24-hour flash sale. Only 3 left in stock. This deal expires at midnight. Your cart is about to expire. Sir, your cart cannot expire. It is a website. No, this is deliberate. The entire business model of impulse retail is engineered urgency. When you feel urgent about a purchase, that feeling was manufactured. Missing a sale because of your 72-hour rule is not a failure. It is you using a system that is smarter than an algorithm designed by 1,000 behavioral economists trying to take your money, remove saved payment info from websites, delete shopping apps from your phone. And these 2 changes alone reduce impulse purchases significantly. Not because you became more disciplined, but because the path of least resistance changed. Distance is your friend. Friction is your friend. Inconvenience for once in your financial life is genuinely working in your favor. Rule 5. The replacement test. Stop upgrading things that work. Grab your phone. How old is it? Now, name one thing you literally cannot do on it. Not something it does slower. Not something the new model does better. Something you genuinely, physically cannot do right now that a new phone would allow. I'll wait. Most people can't name one, and yet Americans replace their phones on average every 2.5 to 3.5 years, driven not by failure but by the feeling that the current one is getting old. 1 in 8 Americans upgrades every single year. A $1,000 phone every year for 30 years is $30,000 in devices alone. Or stretch the cycle to 4 years, that's $7,500. The difference, invested at 7%, grows to approximately $50,000 for a phone that makes the same calls and sends the same texts. This is the replacement test. Before replacing anything, phone, car, furniture, laptop, appliance, it must answer yes to at least one of 3 questions. First, is it actually broken in a way that repair cannot fix for less than half the replacement cost? Second, does the new version do something fundamentally different, not better, different, that changes what you can accomplish? Third, is keeping this thing costing more money than replacing it? If you can't answer yes to at least one of those, you're not replacing it. You're upgrading it, and you're paying an enormous price for the feeling of newness. Tyler, the third person I want to introduce, was a decent spender in every individual category. He didn't blow money on gambling or extravagance. He just couldn't stop replacing things that worked. New phone every year, new car every 3 years, always trading up, new laptop every 2 years, new furniture whenever he got tired of looking at the old stuff. Over 10 years, the gap between what Tyler spent and what a keep it until it breaks lifestyle would have cost was $135,000. Invested, that becomes over $700,000 by retirement. Here's what makes Tyler's situation particularly insidious. He was never extravagant about any individual item. He wasn't buying supercars or designer wardrobes. He was buying normal things at normal prices, just constantly refreshing, just never letting anything reach the end of its useful life before replacing it with the slightly newer version. The upgrade habit is dangerous precisely because no single instance of it feels unreasonable. It's only when you look at the cumulative ledger that the number reveals itself. And by then you've been doing it so long it feels like just who you are. It isn't. It's a habit. Tyler didn't blow his money on anything irresponsible. He just never let boredom cost him $700,000 in peace. Rule 6. Name the Diderot effect, or it will bankrupt you quietly. In 1769, French philosopher Denis Diderot received a gift, a beautiful scarlet dressing gown. He loved it, and then almost immediately, he noticed that everything else he owned looked terrible by comparison. His old desk chair was suddenly unbearable, his prints looked cheap, his writing table was embarrassing. One by one, he replaced everything in his study to match the gown. By the time he was done, he'd spent far more than the gown was worth and written an essay about it called "Regret for My Old Dressing Gown," which is genuinely one of history's most relatable pieces of financial writing. Anthropologist Grant McCracken named this the Diderot effect in 1988. One purchase triggers a cascade of complementary purchases in pursuit of a new standard of coherence. Your lifestyle has a Diderot unity, like a set of things that go together in your mental model of who you are. Introduce one item that sits above that standard and everything else in the set suddenly feels insufficient. You see this everywhere once you're looking. Someone buys a new couch, suddenly the rug looks wrong, the rug gets replaced, the coffee table doesn't match. Coffee table goes, the lamp looks out of place. By the time it's over, you've spent $4,000 because you bought a $1,200 couch. Apple built their entire ecosystem and an enormous portion of their trillion-dollar revenue on the Diderot effect. The iPhone makes the MacBook feel natural. The MacBook makes the iPad feel useful. The iPad makes the Apple Watch feel necessary. The Apple Watch makes the AirPods feel obvious, like you bought a phone in 2018. Apple has been thanking you ever since. Tyler's apartment is a Diderot Cascade. He bought a nice TV 2 years ago. Then the old couch looked wrong next to it. New couch. Now the coffee table was too small for the space. New table. The rug clashed. New rug. Just none of these felt like mistakes. Each one was a perfectly reasonable response to the thing that came before it. That's the cascade. That's how Diderot lost his study and Tyler lost his savings. The Diderot effect also explains something that trips up a lot of people who try to upgrade their lifestyle responsibly. They get the raise. How can they decide to treat themselves to one genuinely justified upgrade, and then 6 months later, they're confused about why their savings haven't improved despite earning more? It's because the one justified upgrade dragged 11 unjustified ones in behind it. This is the part Marcus has never understood about his own spending. Every upgrade made sense. The aggregate made no sense at all. The firebreak is a question. Before any significant purchase, is ask, what else will this make me want to buy? If the answer is more than 0 things, add those costs to the original price. That's what you're really spending. Diderot got a dressing gown. Tyler got a TV. You got an iPhone. The math works out about the same. Rule 7, the subscription purge protocol. I want you to open your banking app right now. Scroll to recurring transactions. Take 30 seconds. How many did you find that you forgot existed? And here's the national average. Americans spend $219 a month on subscriptions. When asked to estimate, they guess $86. That is 155% underestimation. You're paying for things you've mentally already canceled. They're still billing you. And because they're small, $9.99 here, $14.99 there, they fly completely under the psychological radar. Somewhere right now, you're paying $12.99 a month for a meditation app you have not opened since the week you downloaded it, which was also the last time you meditated. That's not an accident. Subscription pricing is specifically designed to stay below the threshold where your brain registers it as a real expense. Monthly feels smaller than annual. $11.99 feels like nothing. 12 of them feels like nothing 12 times. And then you add them up and it's $219 a month, and you genuinely have no idea where it went. The protocol is not review your subscriptions. Everyone says that. The protocol is nuclear, cancel everything. Every single recurring charge that isn't a utility or a genuine non-negotiable. Cancel it today. Then, this is the part that actually works. Only resubscribe to the services you find yourself actively reaching for within the next 7 days. Everything else wasn't serving you, you were just serving it. The reason this works is behavioral inertia. When subscriptions exist, canceling them requires effort, so they persist. When they don't exist, resubscribing requires effort, so most don't come back. You're using the same human laziness that let them accumulate to now keep them gone. Do this quarterly. The first time you run it, most people find 3 to 5 subscriptions they'd genuinely forgotten. At $15 average, all right, that's $180 to $900 a year producing exactly 0 value, funded on autopilot while you wondered why your savings weren't growing. The subscription economy is built on one assumption, that you won't check. That was 7 rules for protecting your money from leaking out invisibly. The next 5 are about actually building it. And the math on this next section is genuinely the most uncomfortable part of the video, because this is where we calculate exactly what Marcus's habits have actually cost him. The number is not small. Rule 8, the anti-lifestyle creep raise protocol. Every time Marcus got a raise, something happened. Not immediately, gradually. He'd tell himself he deserved something. One reasonable treat turned into a new baseline. Your $78,000 became time for a nicer apartment. $100,000 became time for the BMW. $120,000 became dinners at places I used to think were special. $155,000 became just normal, the new normal, and normal is invisible, which is why he never noticed that the $144,600 in raises he'd received over 6 years had produced exactly 0 additional wealth. This is lifestyle creep. And it is not a character flaw. It's a deeply wired human response to improved circumstances called hedonic adaptation. Your brain normalizes the new standard almost immediately and recalibrates enough upward The restaurant that used to feel like a special occasion is now just Tuesday. You don't even look at the prices anymore. That is not success. That is a very expensive Tuesday. The treats become the baseline. The baseline expands. You feel the same. You need more to feel the same again. The anti-lifestyle creep raise protocol breaks this cycle with one rule. When your income goes up, 75% of the increase goes to savings and investments before you ever adjust a single lifestyle expense. $10,000 raise, $7,500 goes to investments. The remaining $2,500 can go to whatever you actually want. This feels like a sacrifice until you run the math. Richard Thaler and Shlomo Benartzi proved this exact concept with their Save More Tomorrow program. And when people committed future raises to savings before receiving them, savings rates went from 3.5% to 13.6% over 3.5 years. The trick is that the raise never feels like a loss because they captured it before it ever landed in the spending account. Here's the cumulative number I want you to sit with. If Marcus had followed just rules 8, 9, and 10 from age 26, kept his lifestyle at $78,000, invested the raises, and automated the whole thing, he would have approximately $1.2 million by 45. He has $11,400. The gap between those two numbers is not bad luck, not a difficult job market, not the economy. It's 12 rules he didn't know. That's it. That's the whole story. Dana doesn't earn more than Marcus. She just did this religiously from age 26. The version of you that exists before a raise arrives is perfectly comfortable at your current lifestyle because you've been living it. That version of you doesn't need anything the new salary offers. Let the increase compound invisibly. And here's the thing worth internalizing. The lifestyle you have right now, the one you're currently surviving, is already someone else's dream. You adapted to it. You'll adapt to not upgrading it too. And in 20 years, you'll have something Marcus never will. Proof that you didn't spend your prime earning years buying things you don't remember. Rule 9. Automate the override. Willpower is not a financial strategy. At some point in your life, you have told yourself you were going to start saving more. You meant it. You were genuinely committed. It lasted about 3 paychecks. Then something came up, or nothing came up, but somehow the money still wasn't there, and you told yourself you'd start again next month. Next month came. Same result. That's not a character flaw. That's what happens when you rely on intention instead of infrastructure. Let me say something that nobody in personal finance wants to say because it sounds like giving up. Willpower doesn't work with money. Not consistently, not long-term, not under stress, and trying harder is not the solution. This isn't pessimism, it's neuroscience. Decision fatigue is real. The more choices you make throughout a day, the worse your subsequent decisions become. Hey, by the time you're tired and stressed and sitting across from a checkout page with your saved credit card preloaded and one-click purchasing enabled, you are not making a rational economic decision. You are making a tired, depleted, decision-fatigued version of a choice that your well-rested self would probably handle differently. This is why automation is not a shortcut. It's the actual strategy. Behavioral economist Brigitte Madrian and Dennis Shea changed retirement savings behavior across an entire institution by changing one thing, making enrollment in the 401k automatic instead of opt-in. Participation went from 49% to 86%. Nobody got smarter or more disciplined. The default changed. The financial industry has spent decades making investing feel complicated so that you pay someone else to do it for you. It is not complicated. It is a transfer and a checkbox. Do the transfer. Check the box. Here's the full automation stack that actually works. Payday, not the day after, not when you get around to it. An automatic transfer fires to your investment account. Your emergency fund lives at a separate bank with no debit card, so accessing it requires deliberate effort. Your bills, auto pay, your retirement contribution is a percentage, not a dollar amount, so it scales automatically with every raise. And there's one more piece most people overlook. The order of operations matters enormously. Pay yourself first, before rent, before groceries, before anything. Not because those things don't matter, but because when savings comes last, it gets whatever's left over, which is usually nothing. When savings comes first, spending adjusts. It always adjusts. Humans are extraordinarily good at living within constraints when those constraints are structural rather than voluntary. What you're left with in your spending account is already the money you can spend. No math required, no willpower required, no monthly internal debate about whether this purchase is really in the budget. The system already handled it. The people who consistently build wealth are not more disciplined than people who don't. They just built better architecture. Build the architecture. Rule 10. Track one number, your savings rate. Raise your hand if you've started a detailed budget, maintained it for 2 months with enormous effort, got distracted by life, fell off for a week, felt guilty, never opened it again, and then told yourself you'd start fresh on January 1st. The problem with complex budget systems isn't that people are lazy, it's that complex systems have too many failure points. Miss one category and the whole thing feels broken. Forget to log one dinner, and now the spreadsheet is 3 weeks behind and giving you existential dread. 32% of Americans maintain a monthly budget, and most budgeting apps are abandoned within 90 days. Not because people don't want to be better with money, because the system demands too much. So here's the minimalist alternative. Track one number, your savings rate. Savings rate equals money saved and invested divided by gross income times 100. If it's going up, you're winning. If it's going down, something is wrong and you know to look for it. If it's flat, you're maintaining. That's the whole dashboard. 30 seconds a month. If your savings rate is currently 0 and you are right now optimizing your asset allocation or debating which index fund has the lowest expense ratio, that is the financial equivalent of rearranging furniture in a house that is on fire. Put out the fire first. And the savings rate is the single metric that captures everything else. High savings rate means income grew faster than spending, or spending fell, or both. Low savings rate catches lifestyle creep, subscription drift, unexpected expenses absorbing your buffer, all of it in one number. The target is simple. At least 20% of gross income going to savings and investments. If you're below that, you have a clear signal to find friction in your spending. If you're above it, you're building real wealth on whatever income you have. $40,000 or $140,000. The savings rate doesn't care about your salary. It only cares about the gap between what comes in and what goes out. That gap is your entire financial future compressed into one number. Check savings rate monthly, check net worth quarterly, that's it. Everything else is noise, and if your savings rate is currently 0, that is the only financial emergency that actually exists right now, not your credit score. Not whether you're in the right fund, not your tax strategy. Get the savings rate positive first, the foundation before the furniture. Rule 11. Translate every purchase into hours of your life. Here's a reframe I want you to carry permanently after this video. Money is time, not metaphorically, literally. You traded hours of your life for the dollars in your account. When you spend money, you are spending the hours you work to earn it. And that reframe makes certain decisions look very different. Take your monthly take-home pay and divide it by 160, and the approximate number of working hours in a month, that's your real after-tax hourly rate. For someone taking home $4,000 a month, that's $25 an hour. Now, translate your purchases. That $700 phone, 28 hours of your life, a full week of work, traded for a device you'll replace in 3 years. That $748 average new car payment, 30 hours a month, every month for 6 years. 360 hours a year, 9 working weeks annually, going directly to a machine that loses 60% of its value over 5 years. Marcus's BMW costs him 360 hours of his life every year. He does not find this calculation relaxing. Tyler's decade of upgrades, phones, cars, laptops, furniture, cost him approximately 5,400 hours of his working life. That's 2.5 years of Mondays through Fridays, spent replacing things that worked. And Vicki Robin introduced this framework in Your Money or Your Life in 1992 and called it Life Energy. The finite irreplaceable resource you convert into money and then convert back into things. The question isn't, can I afford this? It's, is this worth the hours of my life I'm exchanging for it? Some things pass this test easily. A good mattress at $1,500 costs maybe 60 hours of life, and you sleep on it for 3,650 nights. That's roughly 2 cents per use. A coffee machine you use every morning for 10 years, worth it. The $180 jacket you'll wear twice, $90 per wear. The subscription you forgot existed is still charging you 40 minutes of your working month, every month, forever until you run the purge protocol from Rule 7. What makes this reframe particularly powerful is that it forces you to compare purchases against something genuinely scarce. Money feels abstract. You make it, you spend it, you make more. Time is the thing you cannot make more of. When you calculate that a luxury weekend trip costs 120 hours of your working life, you have to ask honestly, is this how I want to spend 120 hours of the finite, non-renewable time I have? Sometimes the answer is an emphatic yes. Sometimes you realize you were going to do it out of habit or social obligation and not actually that enthusiastically. The hours make it honest in a way the dollar amount never could. Like, this isn't about feeling guilty every time you buy something. It's about building a reflex that asks the real question. What is this actually worth to me? Not in dollars, but in days. Rule 12, calculate your freedom horizon and protect it above everything else. Here's the final rule, the one that ties all the others together, and it starts with a question I want you to answer honestly. If you lost your job tomorrow, no severance, no warning, just gone, how long could you survive without changing a single thing about your lifestyle? Count the days, not weeks, not months, not I'd figure something out. Specific days of runway before the first bill doesn't get paid. For the median American, that number is approximately 14 days, 2 weeks. That's not a financial cushion. That's a tightrope over a canyon with no net. That number, the months you could survive with zero income, is your freedom horizon. And I'd argue it's the single most honest measure of your financial health. Not your income, not your net worth on paper, not your LinkedIn title. Your freedom horizon. Because your income means nothing if it stops and you collapse in 60 days. Your net worth means nothing if it's entirely illiquid, tied up in home equity you can't access, retirement accounts you can't touch, stock options that haven't vested. A major behavioral finance studies have found a specific number that changes everything. Having just $2,000 in accessible emergency savings produces a massive increase in financial well-being. Not $200,000, not $2 million, $2,000. A single $2,000 emergency fund often produces a bigger well-being improvement than having a $500,000 income, than having over $1 million in illiquid assets. $2,000 create because it extends the freedom horizon past the point where every unexpected expense is a crisis. This is exactly why Dana sleeps well on $72,000. And Marcus doesn't sleep well on $155,000. Dana has a 6-month freedom horizon. Marcus has 11 days, the BMW and the apartment and the iPhone. Don't extend your freedom horizon, they compress it. Every lifestyle upgrade that increases your monthly expenses is a direct reduction in your freedom. Every dollar that goes to the emergency fund extends it. Every investment you make extends it further, because eventually those investments generate income that lengthens your horizon without requiring any additional work from you at all. Here's how to build it. Start with 1 month. 1 month of expenses in a savings account at a separate bank with no debit card. Don't touch it for anything that isn't a genuine emergency. Not a sale, not a gap between paychecks, not a great opportunity. 1 month, then 3, then 6. If you get to 6 months of expenses saved and invested, you will experience a shift in your psychology that is genuinely difficult to describe until you felt it. The financial anxiety that lives in the background of every decision, the low hum of what if something goes wrong, starts to quiet. Not because nothing can go wrong, because you've built enough margin that something going wrong no longer means everything goes wrong. And that quiet, that specific silence where the money stress used to be, that's what financial stability actually feels like. Not a number in an account, not a salary, not a title. That silence. The freedom horizon is the number that tells you whether you own your life or your life owns you. So let's bring this back to Marcus and Dana. Marcus isn't a bad person. He's not reckless or irresponsible. He just never defined his enough number. He never calculated the second price tag, never ran the identity audit, never built the 72-hour firewall, never ran the replacement test, never named the Diderot effect spiraling through his apartment, never did the subscription purge, absorbed every raise into his lifestyle before it could compound, relied on willpower instead of automation, tracked nothing useful, never translated his spending into hours, and has a freedom horizon of 11 days on a $155,000 salary. That's not one catastrophic mistake. It's 12 small ones, repeated every day without awareness. And the cruel thing is that individually, none of them look like mistakes. They look like living. They look like enjoying your success, rewarding yourself, keeping up, being normal. The problem is that normal right now means 62% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, including people earning more than anyone in history ever has. Normal is broken. These rules exist so you don't have to be. Dana made none of those mistakes. She earns less than half of Marcus's salary, has 14 times his net worth, and could absorb a 6-month job loss without selling a single asset. She's not deprived. She's not miserable. She just plays by different rules. Rules that compound quietly in the background of her life, while everyone else's financial anxiety compounds in the background of theirs. Here's the thing about financial stability that nobody puts on a poster. It's quiet. It doesn't look like anything from the outside. Dana's life, viewed from the outside, probably looks less impressive than Marcus's. Smaller apartment, older car, less visible consumption. But inside that life, there is a specific kind of peace that Marcus's BMW and Marcus's address and Marcus's LinkedIn will never produce. The peace of knowing that if everything went sideways tomorrow, you would be okay. That your next paycheck isn't load-bearing. That a broken water heater is an inconvenience and not a catastrophe. That you have options, that's not a feeling you can buy. It's a feeling you build rule by rule, month by month, with decisions that are invisible to everyone except your future self. The gap between Marcus and Dana was never income. It was always the rules. These 12 rules are not complicated. Like, none of them require a finance degree or a spreadsheet that looks like air traffic control. They require honesty about why you spend what you spend, systems that make good decisions automatic, and a clear answer to the question, how much is actually enough? Start with one rule. Whichever one landed hardest in this video, that's the one. Run the replacement test on your phone right now. Do the subscription purge this afternoon. Calculate your freedom horizon and write the actual number down. Put the 72-hour firewall on your next 5 purchases, pick one, and start today. Because the second price tag on waiting is also enormous. Marcus is going to watch this video, feel something, and change nothing. Dana already did the work. The only question this video can't answer is which one you decide to be, because that part is entirely up to you. If this helped you see your finances differently, hit subscribe, share it with someone who needs it, and leave a comment telling me which rule hit closest to home. I read every single one. There's no prize for earning a lot and having nothing to show for it, but there is a very real reward for doing the math while everyone else is ignoring it.